Welcome to Echoes of Holmes. Tonight, a brilliant mind faces the riddle of the broken signet. In fog-filled London streets, a shattered emblem hides a deadly secret. Are you listening late at night or during your morning tea? Light a candle, get comfortable, and let the mystery begin. It was upon a raw February morning, when the London fog hung heavy over Baker Street, that I first heard of the affair of the broken signet. The fire in our sitting room smouldered dully, throwing a half-hearted glow against the walls, and Holmes sat in his armchair with the air of one who had been long immersed in profound thought. His pipe, clenched firmly between his teeth, sent forth slow spirals of smoke that mingled with the gloom. "Watson," said he suddenly, without so much as turning his head, "there has been an unexpected visitor at Scotland Yard this morning." I looked up from the medical journal I had been attempting to study and regarded him with a smile. "Holmes, I cannot help but marvel at your prescience." "And what leads you to this particular conclusion?" "The answer is before your eyes," said Holmes, gesturing with his long, pale hand. "Observe the damp smudge upon the rug near the door, the print of a man's boot. It is of a heavy cut, with a short sole and thick heel. Only one such type is issued to the constables at Scotland Yard. Judging by the moisture, the print was left no more than an hour ago. Ergo, a messenger has come from the yard. I would not need to hazard more than a florin to bet that he brought word of a case to baffle them." Before I could voice my astonishment, our supposition was confirmed by the entrance of Mrs. Hudson, bearing in her hand a card upon a salver. "A gentleman to see you, sir, Inspector Lestrade, from the yard." Holmes accepted the card with the faintest of nods. "Show him up, Mrs. Hudson." Moments later, our visitor arrived, a small, wiry man with sharp features, whose quick movements always put me in mind of a ferret. His bow was brisk, and his tone betrayed the faintest irritation that often crept into his manner when he found himself obliged to seek Holmes's aid. "Good morning, Mr. Holmes. Good morning, Doctor. I dare say I disturb you at your leisure, but there's a matter most peculiar on which we require your counsel." "Your presence, Lestrade, is a pleasure rather than a disturbance," said Holmes, with just the trace of a sardonic smile. "Pray be seated. And what is this perplexity that drives Scotland Yard once more to Baker Street?" Lestrade placed a small, velvet-lined case upon the table. With a click, he opened it to reveal a fragment of a gold ring, snapped clean through, its bezels still bearing the impression of a heraldic device that seemed to be a falcon in flight. "This was found clutched in the hand of Sir Reginald Musgrave," said Lestrade, lowering his voice. "The baronet was discovered last evening, lifeless, in the library of his town residence in Grosvenor Square. There was no sign of struggle, save for the broken signet in his grasp. The household swears that none had entered or left by door or window. The case, I assure you, is closed to us on every side." Holmes leaned forward, the languor vanishing from his figure. His eyes gleamed as he turned the fragment over between his long fingers. "A falcon argent upon a field azure," he murmured, "a device as old as the Plantagenets. Tell me, Lestrade, was there no sign of intrusion at all?" "None. No forced lock, no open window. Sir Reginald dined alone. His valet heard nothing amiss until he went to carry in a tray at 10 o'clock. By then the master was beyond recall, and the sign, broken clean through, as you see. No one in the house could tell whence it came. Sir Reginald possessed no such ring." Holmes' brows knitted for a moment, and then his lips curved into that enigmatic smile I had often seen when the chase was first begun. "Watson," said he, "have you any engagements this afternoon?" "None that cannot be deferred," I replied eagerly. "Then we shall accompany Inspector Lestrade to Grosvenor Square." "It appears to me, Lestrade, that you have not so much brought me a case as you have laid a riddle before me. and riddles, as you know, are the most diverting of all occupations. Thus it was that within the hour, Holmes and I were borne away in a hansom cab, the fog swirling like a pall about us, toward the great mansion where a gentleman had been found dead, with a mystery clenched in his hand, the mystery of the broken signet. The cab rattled through the mist-laden streets, the gas lamps looming as hazy orbs above the pavement. I sat opposite Holmes, who leaned back with his arms folded and eyes half closed, though I knew full well that his mind was at work in a fashion as keen as any blade. Lestrade, perched beside me, gave a brief outline of what little was known, his tone alternating between professional precision and suppressed vexation at the mystery. "Sir Reginald Musgrave," said the inspector, "was a man of impeccable standing, wealthy, discreet, and with no enemies that we can discover. His household consists of a valet, an elderly housekeeper, and a maid-of-all work. None of them bear the slightest suspicion. The doors were bolted, the windows secure. It is as though death stepped in without sound or trace." Holmes's lips twitched into the faintest of smiles. "You present me with a locked chamber, Lestrade, though I doubt it will remain locked for long. Tell me, what are the physicians?" "The family doctor certified death from heart failure." But the clenched hand with the broken ring unsettled him. He confessed he could not explain why Sir Reginald should grip such a thing in his last moment, still less whence it came. Holmes tapped his fingers lightly against his knee. "Quite so. You remark upon the obvious, yet it is the unusual that matters. A man may die from heart failure, but heart failure seldom snaps gold in two. I could not help but observe that our companion flushed slightly at Holmes's quiet rebuke. Yet Lestrade, to his credit, bore it without complaint. Arriving at Grosvenor Square, we found the Musgrave residence shrouded in that sombre stillness peculiar to houses where death has lately passed. A footman admitted us with solemn civility, and we were conducted at once to the library where the baronet had met his end. It was a lofty chamber, its walls lined with sombre volumes in calf and vellum. A great oak desk stood near the window, its surface littered with correspondence and an extinguished candle. In a chair drawn up before the hearth sat the outline of the tragedy. Sir Reginald's body had been removed, but the impression of his collapse lingered in the displaced furniture and the air of disorder. Holmes moved noiselessly about the room, his eyes darting with quick, bird-like movements from object to object. "Watson, you will recall the case of the man with the twisted lip," he murmured suddenly. "How little things reveal themselves when one refuses to be led by appearances." I bent obediently, though to my eyes the carpet bore no mark beyond the faint trail where servants had borne the body. Holmes, however, knelt by the desk and picked up a crumpled scrap of paper that had slipped beneath its leg. "A fragment of correspondence," he said, smoothing it out. "I'll expect you at the appointed hour. The matter is urgent, and there is no delay. No signature, no date, but the handwriting is firm, masculine, accustomed to command." "Interesting," Lestrade frowned. "We found nothing of the sort during our search." "You found nothing," said Holmes dryly, "because you looked for everything. Precision, my dear inspector, is of more value than zeal." From the desk drawer he extracted a bundle of sealed letters tied with ribbon. These he returned without comment. Instead, he drifted toward the hearthrug, where the faintest dark smear discoloured the fibres. He pressed it with a finger and brought it to his nose. "Watson, oblige me by noting this is wax, not soot. Blue sealing wax, such as might have secured the fragment of the ring. It has been trodden into the carpet, suggesting haste or perhaps a struggle of some kind. Sir Reginald did not sit here in tranquil reading when death overtook him." Lestrade shifted impatiently. "And yet, Holmes, there is no sign of an assailant. All within the house were in their places. The servants are beyond reproach. Holmes made no reply. He had drawn his magnifying lens from his pocket and was bending over the oak floorboards near the French window. A low whistle escaped him. "Watson, observe these scratches. They are fresh, the polish displaced in narrow lines. What do you conclude?" "Something heavy was dragged, perhaps," I ventured. "Precisely. A chair moved hastily to conceal something or to provide vantage. I should wish to question the valet on this point." Summoned, the man appeared presently, a tall, spare fellow named Jenkins, with a deferential manner but a nervous twitch about the mouth. He confirmed that Sir Reginald had dined alone and dismissed him at 8 o'clock. He had heard nothing more until 10, when he found his master collapsed, the broken ring clenched in his right hand. Holmes' eyes never left the man's face as he answered. "And the French windows, Jenkins? Were they secured?" "Yes, sir. Bolted fast from within, as always." Holmes gave a little nod. "Yet the scratches remain." "Curious. That will suffice for the moment." As the valet withdrew, Holmes turned abruptly to Lestrade. "You spoke of no enemies. I suggest you extend your inquiries." Sir Reginald was clearly awaiting a visitor. The fragment of a letter attests it. The wax, the scratches, the broken signet, each speaks of intrusion, though not in the manner you imagine. "And what manner is that?" I asked. Holmes's smile was one of sphinx-like reticence. "My dear Watson, to answer would be to spoil the game. Let us say that the ring is not so much an ornament as a cipher, and that cipher shall prove the key. Until then, patience." With that, he drew his coat about him and motioned us toward the door, his eyes alight with the first glow of the chase. I followed, my mind filled with unanswered questions, yet knowing from long experience that Holmes, when most cryptic, was also upon the surest scent. Thus ended our first examination of Grosvenor Square, leaving us with fragments only a scrap of paper, a smear of wax, a scratched floor, and a broken signet. Yet I could not help but feel that to Holmes these fragments already formed the outline of a solution hidden from the rest of us. The following morning found Holmes in one of his most energetic humours, pacing the length of our sitting-room with rapid strides. His long dressing gown trailed behind him like the robe of some ascetic scholar, and his pipe, clamped firmly between his teeth, sent forth clouds of smoke that wreathed his angular profile in a haze. I had grown accustomed over the years to these restless perambulations which to the casual observer might suggest agitation, but which in truth were signs that his mind was working at the highest pitch of calculation. "Watson," he said, breaking abruptly from his stride, "we are dealing with no ordinary tragedy. The presence of the broken signet, the wax, the letter, and the scratches all point not merely to death, but to design. Musgrave's end was not natural. He was drawn to his library by appointment, and there he met with what? That is what we must now establish." I assented readily, for the strange combination of clues had unsettled me as much as it had intrigued him. "Do you believe the intruder was known to him?" Holmes shrugged lightly. "No, nor bearing a token which bespoke familiarity. Consider the wax, Watson blue, uncommon in colour, and suggestive of some personal or ceremonial seal. Then the ring gold, bearing a falcon argent on a field azure. These are no trifles plucked at random. They are the very emblems of identity. And yet Sir Reginald himself possessed no such item. It was forced into his grasp, or else wrested from another." Before further discussion could ensue, a knock sounded and Lestrade entered, carrying with him a sheaf of papers. His face bore the expression of a man reluctantly returning to a battlefield he had half a mind to abandon. "Holmes," said he, "I have done as you advised. I extended my inquiries. The results are odd, to say the least. Sir Reginald, it seems, was entangled in certain financial dealings with a gentleman by the name of Arthur Penrosa. younger son of an old family, lately returned from the continent. Penrose is said to have pressed him for funds in recent weeks. Moreover, there are whispers of some estrangement between them, though its cause is obscure. Holmes's eyes gleamed. Penrose, the very name smacks of heraldry. Did you learn about his crest? Lestrade shook his head. I'm no student of such things, but the man is known in clubs about Pall Mall, and not favourably. Cards, debts, and an air of entitlement, so my informants tell me. He resides at present in lodgings in Jermyn Street. Holmes drew upon his pipe. We shall visit him. But first, Watson, do you recall the scratches upon the floor near the French window? It is my belief that some item of furniture was moved to conceal an entry, however slight. I propose we return to Grosvenor Square before we confront Mr. Penrose. There is more to be read in that room. Accordingly, we repaired once more to the Musgrave residence. This time, Holmes went straight to the French windows, and with a sudden motion flung them wide. The winter air swept in, carrying with it the muffled sounds of the square. Holmes dropped to his knees upon the threshold. Observe, Watson. Though the bolt was drawn, the frame bears the faintest indentation, as if a thin blade had been used to lift it. Whoever entered was skilful. The scratches on the floor were caused by the shifting of a chair, placed here to obscure the marks from casual view. The valet's assertion of security was thus correct from his perspective, yet incorrect in fact. I bent closer and indeed saw beneath the polish the narrow groove to which he pointed. My admiration for his perception deepened, though I could scarcely conceal my unease at the thought of such a silent entry into a locked room. Holmes rose, dusting his hands. Now let us return to the question of the broken ring. Lestrade, did you trace the device of the falcon? The inspector shook his head. Heraldry is beyond my knowledge. I thought perhaps you, Holmes, cut him off with a wave. I know something, but not enough. We shall consult the College of Arms, if need be. Meanwhile, it suffices that Penrose is heir to no fortune, yet clings to the heirs of ancient lineage. His family may well bear the device of the falcon. It is a hypothesis worth testing. Our business at the Musgrave house concluded, we drove to Jermyn Street. The lodgings were respectable, though the landlady's manner suggested disapproval of her tenant. She ushered us into a sitting-room where Arthur Penrose presently received us. He was a tall, fair man of about 30, with a certain haughty carriage, though his eyes were restless, and betrayed a disposition less assured than his bearing implied. At sight of Holmes, he was surprised at the mention of Musgrave's death. He paled perceptibly. "I knew Sir Reginald but slightly," said he, when pressed by Lestrade. "We met at our club, spoke occasionally of investments. His death is most tragic, but I cannot imagine why you should trouble me in the matter." Holmes regarded him with languid indifference, though I knew well he was noting every twitch of muscle and glance of eye. "You wear no ring, Mr. Penrose?" Holmes inquired casually. The young man frowned. "A ring?" "No, sir, I do not favour them." "Yet your family's crest is a falcon, yes, on a field of blue. You astonish me, Mr. Holmes, with your knowledge of heraldry." Holmes inclined his head slightly. "Merely observation, Mr. Penrose." "And did you correspond with Sir Reginald of late?" "I wrote to him concerning a matter of business, yes, but nothing urgent." Holmes produced from his pocket the crumpled scrap recovered from the library. "Does this hand resemble yours?" Penrose took the paper, glanced at it swiftly, and returned it with an affectation of disdain. "No, sir." "That is not my hand. If you suspect me of some villainy, you wrong me deeply." His tone was defiant, but his hand trembled ever so slightly as he set down the slip. Holmes's eyes narrowed, yet he said nothing further. When we had withdrawn to the street, Lestrade burst out there. "Holmes, a motive in debts, a crest that matches the ring, and a manner as guilty as sin. Shall we not take him at once?" Holmes shook his head with a half-smile. "Too easy, Lestrade, far too easy. If guilt were written in trembling fingers alone, your prisons would be overflowing. No, Penrose is not yet free of suspicion, but his eagerness to deny tells me as much as his connection to the crest. There is another hand in this matter, one far subtler." I pressed him, but Holmes relapsed into silence, his gaze fixed upon the fog-draped street ahead. I knew that within his mind the puzzle was already shifting into new patterns, though to me it was still as opaque as ever. Thus our inquiries advanced. We had a crest, a suspect, and the shadow of a secret appointment. Yet the broken signet remained as inscrutable as when first we saw it, and I could not escape the feeling that the true hand of the affair still lay concealed in darkness. Our return to Baker Street that evening was marked by silence on my part and abstraction on Holmes'. The rattle of the cab wheels seemed loud in the void between us. I longed to press him for an opinion, yet his half-closed eyes and folded arms warned me against intrusion. He was in that state of concentrated meditation from which it was folly to attempt to rouse him. When at last we gained our rooms, he threw off his overcoat, flung himself into his chair, and remained motionless save for the faint curl of smoke from his pipe. It was only after several minutes that he spoke. "Watson, you are troubled. You see Penrose's pallor, his denial, his family crest, and you conclude he is guilty. Am I correct?" I admitted frankly that the thought had occurred to me. "Surely, Holmes, he matches the broken ring more closely than any other. His family crest is the falcon he was in debt to Sir Reginald, and his agitation was patent. What more is required?" Holmes's eyes gleamed through the smoke. "Logic, my dear Watson, requires more than a concordance of circumstances. Remember the maxim when a case appears too plain. It is generally because we have been deceived. Penrose is convenient, perhaps too convenient. Observe further. The ring was broken in twain. Is it not strange that such a token, if truly his, should be found shattered in the baronet's hand? Why should a man present to his creditor a family emblem only to have it destroyed? There is a contradiction here that cries for resolution." I could not deny the force of his words, though my mind remained inclined to Lestrade's simpler conclusion. The inspector himself returned the following morning, flushed with eagerness, to press it still further. "Holmes," said he, striding in without preamble, "we have Penrose in our net. I have witnesses from his club who swear he spoke angrily of Musgrave only a fortnight ago. He declared he would force satisfaction or ruin the man. Furthermore, the landlady testifies he was absent from his rooms at the very hour Musgrave died. The case is as good as closed." Holmes regarded him with an air of languid amusement. "You present a chain, Lestrade, but a chain with too many bright links. I mistrust it. Tell me, have you considered whether another might profit from Penrose's disgrace? A convenient scapegoat is as valuable as a culprit to one who desires concealment." The inspector sniffed. "You are always looking for shadows where there are none, Mr. Holmes. For my part, I believe we have the right man." Holmes waved a hand. "Believe what you will. For myself, I intend to verify. Watson, fetch your coat. We are bound again for Grosvenor Square." Once more, we entered the sombre Musgrave library. This time, Holmes directed his attention not to the windows or the desk, but to the shelves of books lining the walls. He ran his finger along the spines, pausing now and again to draw out a volume, glance at the flyleaf, and return it. At length he stopped before a gap scarcely wider than a finger's breadth. "Watson," he said, "noted this space. A book has been removed recently. The dust along the shelf is disturbed, and there is a faint impression of the binding. But see, here the volume must have been of unusual width, else the adjacent books would not splay so awkwardly. I wonder what work would Sir Reginald Musgrave prize so highly that he would hide it, or that another would wish to remove it? Lestrade frowned. You see ghosts in shadows, Holmes. A man may borrow a book without committing murder. True. Yet the coincidence of a missing book, a secret appointment, and a broken signet strikes me as less than accidental. Holmes turned sharply. Housekeeper! Pray, who else had access to this library? The woman, a severe figure with white cap and apron, curtsied stiffly. Only Sir Reginald, sir. He was particular about it. Neither Jenkins, the valet, nor I entered without leave. He prized his privacy. And yet, murmured Holmes, privacy is a veil that tempts intrusion. Very good, that will do. We withdrew once more, and as we stepped into the fog-laden square, a small boy thrust a folded note into Holmes's hand. He glanced at it swiftly, then passed it to me. It read, "Meet me at the tavern of the Blue Boar tonight, if you would learn the truth of Sir Reginald Musgrave's end. Come alone." There was no signature. Lestrade gave a snort. A trick, Holmes, some mischief maker, no doubt. Holmes's eyes shone with excitement. On the contrary, Inspector, this is the very thread we require. The Blue Boar, Watson, you recall it? A haunt near the river, much frequented by sailors and rough characters. Whoever sent this, he risks much to speak. That evening we ventured forth. The Blue Boar proved a low, smoky tavern with a clientele of dubious respectability. Holmes, with his hat pulled low, led the way to a shadowed corner where a figure awaited us. It was Jenkins, the valet. His face was pale and his hands trembled as he clasped his tankard. "Mr. Holmes," he whispered, "I dare not be seen speaking to you, yet I cannot bear the weight." Sir Reginald feared someone. For weeks he received letters sealed in blue wax. He burned them after reading, but the strain told upon him. On the night of his death, he made me admit no visitors, yet I heard voices in the library. A man's voice was angry, low. When I entered later, he was gone, and Sir Reginald lay lifeless. I saw no more. Holmes bent forward. "And the visitor? Did you recognize him?" Jenkins shook his head miserably. "No, sir, but I believe it was Mr. Penrose." At this declaration, Lestrade smote the table with satisfaction. "There, Holmes, the servant confirms it. Will you deny the evidence now?" Holmes alone remained unmoved. "Evidence, Inspector, or suggestion?" "The valet believes it was Penrose, but belief is not certain. Still, his tale introduces a new element, letters sealed in blue wax. Watson, do you not see how that ties with the smear upon the carpet? Whoever sent those letters is the true hand behind this affair. Penrose may have played his part, but I doubt he orchestrated the whole. We departed the tavern with Jenkins, slinking into the night. Lestrade, flushed with triumph, declared he would have Penrose under lock before morning, but Holmes, striding swiftly through the fog, spoke in tones of quiet certainty. "Watson, mark my words, Penrose stands in peril, yet he is but a piece in a larger game. The true player hides still, but we have brushed his sleeve. Tomorrow we shall tug harder at the thread." And so the case, which had seemed poised to collapse into the simplicity of a single suspect, widened once again into a puzzle of shadowy correspondences, missing books, and whispered meetings. For myself, I could not tell whether Holmes's caution was born of genius or obstinacy, but I knew that the riddle of the broken signet was far from solved. The morning after our encounter at the Blue Boar dawned cold and grey, with a fine drizzle drifting across the windows of Baker Street. Holmes, ever restless when a case had seized his faculties, was already astir when I descended from my room. He sat at the breakfast table, a letter spread before him, and his coffee quite neglected. His eyes, bright with intensity, told me at once that fresh developments had reached him. "Watson," he said, pushing the letter toward me, observing this. It was delivered by hand scarcely half an hour ago. I read quickly. The note was brief, written in an elegant but firm hand. "You meddle at your peril. Let Penrose bear the blame he has earned. Pursue this matter further, and you invite consequences." There was no signature, but at the bottom I was impressed by the smear of blue wax. I set it down with a chill. "A threat, Holmes, and clear confirmation that we are upon the right trail. But to what end should such villains seek to cast blame upon Penrose?" Holmes' lips curved in that enigmatic half-smile of his. "That, my dear fellow, is precisely what I intend to learn. The hand is familiar to me, though I have not yet named it. Rest assured, Watson, every stroke of the pen speaks volumes. For now, however, I shall withhold my surmise." Before I could press him, Lestrade arrived, exuding the satisfaction of a man whose theory has been confirmed by official sanction. "Holmes," he announced, "we have Penrose under arrest. He attempted to leave his lodgings last night after your interview, and his landlady swears he carried a small casket with him. We intercepted him. The casket proved empty, but his agitation was palpable. We shall have him before the magistrate in short order." Holmes regarded him coolly. "You are ever prompt to bind your man, Inspector, though I fear you may have tied the wrong knot. Did you examine the casket for signs of tampering?" "Tampering?" Lestrade scoffed. "It was an ordinary wooden box, lined with velvet. Nothing remarkable about it." Holmes's eyes narrowed, and I saw the quick intake of breath that marked the moment when some hidden connection had flared to life in his mind. He rose abruptly. "Watson, Lestrade, we must return at once to Grosvenor Square. There is an element still unexplored, and I would like to confirm a suspicion before it grows into conviction." Within the hour, we were again in the Musgrave Library. Holmes set to work without delay. He moved from desk to hearth, from window to bookcase, pausing often to examine a detail invisible to others. At one point he knelt before the fire grate, prising gently with his thin-bladed knife. Presently he drew forth a charred fragment of paper. "See here, Watson, this is from one of the letters Jenkins spoke of. The fire consumed most of it, but the edge remains. Note the smear of blue wax, and just legible the words order of. The remainder is lost, but it suffices." I frowned over the blackened scrap. "An order of what?" "Patience, my dear fellow. The answer lies not in conjecture, but in evidence. Observe also the ink. It is of a foreign composition, thicker, darker, almost oily. Such is favoured upon the continent. We have already heard that Penrose spent time abroad, yet recall he denied the letter was his hand. I am inclined to believe him, for the formation of the characters here differs markedly from his. The writer is someone accustomed to command, as I said before, and whose reach extends beyond mere social quarrels." Lestrade muttered impatiently, but Holmes ignored him. He had crossed now to the shelves, and with sudden energy pulled forth a volume bound in blue leather. From behind it slipped a folded sheet, yellowed with age. Holmes spread it upon the desk. It was a genealogy tracing the Musgrave family through centuries, with coats of arms emblazoned in careful ink. Holmes' finger tapped upon one entry. "Watson observed in the 15th century the Musgraves intermarried with the Penroses. Their combined crest was indeed a falcon argent upon a field azure. Do you see now? The ring may not belong to Penrose alone. It is an heirloom of both families, a symbol of unity. To find it shattered in Sir Reginald's hand is no mere coincidence. It is a declaration." "A declaration?" I echoed. "Of enmity, Watson. The breaking of the signet is a gesture of rupture, a deliberate signal that the bond between houses has been severed. Such gestures are rare, but not without precedent. Consider the ancient custom of breaking a seal to signify disinheritance or betrayal. Whoever left that ring intended the message to be understood." Lestrade shook his head. You weave romances, Holmes. I deal in fact. And the fact is, Penrose quarrelled with Musgrave, was heard to threaten him, and was recognized by the valet. That is enough for me." Holmes's eyes flashed. "Yet it is not enough for truth. Did you not note, Lestrade, that Jenkins spoke of a man's voice but confessed he saw no face? His belief in Penrose's guilt may spring less from certainty than from suggestion. Consider further the missing book from the shelf. What if it contained more than idle reading, a will perhaps, or some record of inheritance? If Penrose wished only for money, would he not seize coins or bonds? Yet here we have the theft of knowledge. That points to another mind, subtler than his. He replaced the genealogy with care, and as he did so, his eye caught the faintest glimmer upon the desk's polished surface. He stooped swiftly, producing his lens. A moment later he straightened, his expression triumphant, yet inscrutable. "Watson," he said softly, "here is the clearest proof of all, yet for the present I must keep it close. You shall know in good time. Until then, silence." I could only stare, bewildered, as he pocketed some tiny object I had scarcely glimpsed. That he had discovered a decisive clue was beyond doubt, yet what it might be or how it bore upon the tangled threads of ring, letter, and genealogy he refused to divulge. As we departed the Musgrave house, I pressed him once more. "Holmes, surely you might confide at least to me. What did you find?" He smiled with that air of tantalizing reserve I knew too well. "Watson, to reveal it now would spoil the symmetry of the matter. Trust me, the time will come when every piece shall fall into place. For the present, let Penrose rest in Lestrade's custody. The true adversary has yet to show his face, but I promise you we shall see him soon enough." With that he hailed a cab, leaving me to nurse my curiosity and my growing conviction that though Lestrade's case seemed strong, the real drama was only beginning to unfold. The secret clue Holmes had pocketed remained hidden, yet I sensed it was the fulcrum upon which the entire mystery would turn. The following day brought with it a development that altered the complexion of the case entirely. I was at breakfast when Holmes, who had been uncharacteristically silent, suddenly threw aside the morning newspaper and passed it across the table to me with a finger pressed firmly against a column on the 3rd page. "Read that, Watson?" said he, his tone grave. The headline announced attempted assault in Jermyn Street lodgings. The article described how Arthur Penrose, while under guard pending his appearance before the magistrate, had been set upon by a masked assailant. The attacker had fled before constables could seize him, but not before leaving Penrose battered and half unconscious in his cell. The prisoner's condition was reported serious, though not life-threatening. I looked up in shock. "Holmes, what does this mean? If Penrose were the guilty man, why should anyone seek his life?" "Precisely," replied Holmes, his eyes alight. "It is the strongest indication yet that Penrose, though entangled, is not the architect of this affair. Someone fears that he might speak, or worse, be proven innocent. An attempt at silencing him, Watson. Our adversary grows bold." At that moment, Lestrade himself arrived, his face flushed with agitation. "You've seen the news, Holmes? The devil took it. I was so sure of Penrose. And now this. The Yard is in uproar. Some say it proves his guilt that his confederates would rather kill him than let him betray them. Others are less certain. Blast it all, I don't know what to think." Holmes regarded him with calm intensity. "Think, Inspector, that Penrose is but a pawn. The hand that moved against him is the same that guided Sir Reginald to his death. The question is who benefits if both Musgrave and Penrose are struck down." Lestrade muttered something about gamblers and creditors, but Holmes waved it aside. No. Money may be a spur, but there is more here. Remember the genealogy, the broken signet, the missing volume. We deal with a matter of inheritance, of lineage, claims, ancient and bitter. Our foe is one who hides in shadow yet strikes through others. We must draw him into the light. By mid-morning, we were once again in Grosvenor Square. Holmes moved swiftly to the library, ignoring the protests of the weary housekeeper. This time his attention fell upon a portrait that hung above the mantel, a stern-faced gentleman in Elizabethan garb, beneath which a small brass plaque bore the name Edmund Musgrave, 1582. Holmes stood before it, motionless, his head tilted in that peculiar manner which always heralded a breakthrough. At last he spoke. "Watson, do you see? The falcon device upon the ring is here also in the corner of the canvas. The Musgraves have long borne it, though in union with Penrose's arms. The portrait confirms the antiquity of the symbol. Sir Reginald's death is bound to that heritage. Then Penrose's connection is genuine, but not exclusive. The crest belongs to both houses. Whoever shattered the ring meant to proclaim the end of unity, to sever that ancient tie. That is the language of the gesture, and I have little doubt it was meant to terrify Penrose as much as to strike Musgrave." Even as he spoke, a cry echoed through the house. We hurried into the hall, where the maid, pale and trembling, pointed toward the stair. "It is Jenkins, sir, the valet. He lies in his rumour. I fear he is dying." We found the man sprawled upon his bed, his face contorted in agony. A glass of water stood upon the nightstand, beside which lay a small vial uncorked. Holmes snatched it up, sniffed and frowned. "Poison, Watson, the bitter almond prussic acid. But note, the vial is unlabelled and the cork is new." I doubt this was his doing. I bent quickly to examine the unfortunate man. His pulse fluttered faintly, his breath came in gasps. "It may be too late, Holmes, yet I shall do what I can." I attempted such measures as were possible, but within minutes Jenkins was gone. His last words, whispered faintly as he clutched at my sleeve, were, "The book hidden." Then his eyes glazed, and he lay still. Holmes straightened, his expression grim. "So, Watson, the second blow has fallen. First Musgrave, then the attempt upon Penrose, now the silencing of the servant. Each strike removes a witness, narrows the circle of knowledge." The book he spoke of, clearly the missing volume we observed, was of greater import than we yet realized. It must be recovered at all costs. Lestrade, who had stood thunderstruck, found his voice at last. "By heaven, Holmes, this is murder beyond all doubt. Jenkins was poisoned, you say? Then the killer is among the household or has access to it. I'll have every servant under lock before the hour is out." Holmes shook his head impatiently. "Folly, Inspector. The hand that moved against Jenkins is too subtle to betray itself so clumsily. This is the work of a mind that anticipates your every step. To clap irons on the housemaid is to chase shadows. We must be more precise." He returned to the library with renewed urgency, and there, upon the desk, he laid out the fragment of the burnt letter, the genealogy, and the charred scrap we had recovered. His long fingers hovered above them like those of a chess player contemplating the board. "Watson, consider. Sir Reginald receives threatening letters sealed in blue wax. He conceals a book of importance, which is afterward removed. He dies, clutching a broken signet. His valet, who knew of the letters, is poisoned, and Penrose, who shares the family crest, is nearly murdered. What does this pattern tell you?" I confessed, with some embarrassment, that it told me little, save that a conspiracy of considerable malignity was at work. Holmes gave a thin smile. "It tells me, my dear fellow, that the motive is not money but legacy. The broken signet, the genealogy, the missing book all speak of claim and counterclaim. Someone would erase one line of inheritance to elevate another. But who? That is the remaining question." He paced the length of the room, then turned abruptly to Lestrade. "Penrose must be guarded more carefully. Double the watch upon him.
If he dies, the last visible link between the two houses perishes, and our adversary triumphs. Meanwhile, I shall take steps of my own. Steps? I asked. Holmes' eyes gleamed. Yes, Watson, the time has come for me to act, not merely observe. You know well my fondness for disguise. Our quarry believes himself hidden very well. I shall move unseen among those who think themselves beyond suspicion. Tonight I will go hunting. With that, he gathered his coat about him and strode from the room, leaving Lestrade muttering in bewilderment, and myself filled with both admiration and unease. For when Sherlock Holmes set his mind to the chase, it was not only the guilty who trembled. The very air seemed charged with suspense, as though London itself awaited the next stroke of this deadly game. Thus the stakes were raised to another death, a second attempt at murder, and Holmes preparing to venture forth in one of his perilous disguises. I could only pray that his boldness would bring illumination, not disaster. That evening, Baker Street was enveloped in a peculiar stillness, broken only by the occasional creak of the floorboards
beneath our feet and the soft hiss of the kettle over the stove. Holmes sat by the fire, his gaze fixed upon the dancing flames, though the shadows they cast revealed little of his thoughts. I busied myself with notes from the day, yet could not suppress the persistent curiosity that tugged at my mind. "Holmes," I ventured at last, "you spoke of taking action tonight. What is your plan? Surely it is not wise to confront our adversary blindly." Holmes tilted his head, a faint smile playing about the corners of his lips. "Blindly? My dear Watson, I never act blindly. Observation, deduction, and preparation are the armaments of reason. Tonight we shall employ all three, but first we must assume a guise that allows us to pass unnoticed." With that, he retrieved from a drawer a collection of items: a bowler hat, spectacles with tinted lenses, a false moustache, and a dark overcoat of unfamiliar cut. In a few deft movements, he transformed himself from the tall, lean detective I knew so well into an entirely new persona, that of a middle-aged gentleman of some discreet refinement, though with no particular claim to notice. "Watson, you shall accompany me, but remain observant rather than intrusive. We seek not a confrontation, but a revelation." Within the hour, we were in the streets near Grosvenor Square, Holmes's disguise allowing him to move through the fog without arousing suspicion. Our objective was clear: to observe any visitor to the Musgrave residence, particularly those who might have knowledge of the missing book or of the broken signet. The night was damp and cold, the gas lamps flickering in the mist. As we approached the house, I saw the faintest movement by a side entrance. A man, hooded and cautious, crept toward the garden gate. Holmes, sensing my gaze, put a finger to his lips and gestured for silence. We followed at a discreet distance. The figure paused at the gate, glanced about nervously, and then produced a small tool to manipulate the lock. The door yielded, and he slipped inside. Holmes beckoned me closer, and we pressed against the wall of the adjoining alley, observing every motion. "Notice, Watson," he whispered, "the care with which he avoids the main windows. He knows the household, and yet he fears detection. That tells us he is no stranger, but one cautious of being recognized." The intruder moved to the library window, and I could see his shadow stretch across the frosted glass. Holmes's eyes gleamed. "Aha! He seeks the book." The man entered the room, closing the window behind him. Holmes signalled for me to remain outside while he crept silently to the opposite side of the house. Through a slight crack in the curtains, I watched him motionless, his eyes darting, while Holmes's own figure, disguised and unrecognizable, lingered in the shadows. Moments passed. The man lifted the missing volume from the shelf with careful precision. He ran his fingers over the spine, inspected its contents briefly, and then, most tellingly, He pressed his lips to the broken signet fragment laid upon the desk. Holmes straightened imperceptibly. "Watson," he murmured, "the hand that claims the ring is the hand that shattered it. Observe carefully." The intruder, apparently satisfied, returned the book to a secret compartment behind the fireplace, leaving the broken ring fragment upon the desk. He paused, listening for sounds, and then withdrew, retracing his steps with caution. Holmes moved swiftly, blocking his path near the garden gate. "Hold, sir," said Holmes, his voice steady, yet carrying authority. "You will come with me." The man turned, startled, revealing a face I had not expected. It was not Penrose, nor anyone of obvious suspicion from the household. Rather, it was a distant relative of Musgrave's, one whose claim to the family legacy had long been overlooked, Julian Fenton, a man of refined appearance, yet with an intensity in his eyes that bespoke obsession. "Holmes!" he exclaimed, attempting to conceal both fear and indignation. "You have no authority, perhaps not," said Holmes mildly. But observation suffices. You have acted under cover of darkness, tampered with a locked house, removed a private volume, and in so doing revealed yourself as the architect of the recent deaths and threats." Fenton's composure faltered. "You do not understand. The ring is mine by right. Sir Reginald sought to deny me my inheritance. I had no choice but to retrieve what was mine. Penrose was a convenient scapegoat. I did not kill the valet. I merely intended to scare him, to prevent interference." Holmes shook his head. "You underestimate the weight of your actions. Death is seldom so easily contained. Your attempts to intimidate and mislead have led to tragedy, and now you must answer for it." Fenton's gaze shifted nervously as he realized the trap was complete. Holmes, patient as always, allowed him the illusion of control before signaling to the nearby constables, who emerged from concealment to take the culprit into custody. I approached Holmes, still marveling at the precision of his orchestration. "You knew he would come, Holmes." "Indeed, Watson, the pattern of behavior, the need for secrecy, the obsession with the family legacy all pointed here. The intruder cannot resist the lure of the hidden volume. And so, with patience and the right disguise, the truth reveals itself, as it always does when one merely observes with reason." As Fenton was led away, he shot one last defiant glance toward the library. Holmes allowed himself a faint smile. "The game is rarely lost, Watson, if one knows which piece to move and when. Thus ended the first stage of our strategic play. The adversary, once hidden in shadows, had been drawn into the open, and the secrets of the night laid bare. Yet, as I well knew, the final unravelling of the mystery still awaited us within the intricate web of the broken signet and the stolen book. The following morning, Baker Street was filled with an unusual air of anticipation. Holmes, having allowed the events of the previous night to settle into the consciousness of the household and the constables, had summoned both Lestrade and myself for a full discussion in the sitting-room. The fire, crackling and warm, cast a soft glow upon his angular features, which were set in the calm of one who had at last corralled the disorder into understanding. "Watson," said he, "you have observed the arrest of Julian Fenton, yet I believe the full extent of his design remains unclear. It is time we examine the evidence in its proper sequence, so that the interrelations of events may emerge with clarity." He moved to the desk and spread before us the various fragments we had collected, the broken signet, the scrap of charred letters, the genealogy, and the recovered volume. Lestrade leaned forward, his expression eager yet anxious. "Begin at the beginning, Holmes," he urged. Holmes inclined his head. "Very well. Sir Reginald Musgrave, a baronet of considerable antiquity, received letters sealed in blue wax. These were of a threatening nature, meant to compel attention to a matter of inheritance. It is clear that one intent upon restoring or claiming a right that had been withheld. The blue wax indicates a formal, almost ceremonial nature, not mere casual correspondence. He held up the broken signet. Now consider this the falcon argent upon a field azure. Both Musgrave and Penrose families bore the emblem, though in combined form historically. By breaking the signet, our perpetrator signalled the severance of that alliance, a threat of exclusion and an assertion of personal claim. Lestrade's eyes widened. And he used Penrose as a scapegoat? Precisely, said Holmes. Penrose's family connection, his debts, and his conspicuous agitation made him an ideal figure upon whom suspicion could be directed. But the pattern is subtler. Observe the missing book from the library shelf. It contained genealogical records and legal notes of inheritance. By removing it, the true perpetrator sought to conceal proof of his own right, while ensuring that any claim by Sir Reginald could not stand unchallenged. He paused, allowing the gravity to settle. Jenkins, the valet, discovered certain details. His death was not accidental. He was poisoned after the perpetrator learned that Jenkins had knowledge of the letters and the location of the hidden volume. Penrose, nearly assaulted at his lodgings, was threatened to prevent him from speaking in Sir Reginald's defence or revealing connections that might undermine the plot. Lestrade muttered, but the attack on Penrose, was that to frighten him, or to ensure he could not testify? Holmes's eyes glittered. Both, Inspector. The individual behind these actions calculated every move. The broken signet was both a message and a diversion. The letters were the bait. Each act was designed to manipulate perception, to guide suspicion toward Penrose while leaving the true heir unobserved. I could see the constable nodding in growing comprehension, though the full elegance of Holmes's reasoning had yet to settle in my own mind. "And Fenton himself?" I asked. "Julian Fenton," said Holmes, turning to me, "is the key. His interest in the Musgrave legacy is ancestral. He knew of the family tie, and he acted to secure what he believed was rightfully his. He left Penrose in place as a convenient foil. His methods, while bold, were precise. He calculated the risk to himself, yet underestimated the vigilance of the observer. That is where I intervened." He paused, allowing the tension to thicken, then drew forth the small object he had discovered in the Musgrave library, the hidden clue he had kept to himself for so long. I leaned forward, fascinated. "This," he said, holding the item carefully in his gloved hand, "is a miniature wax seal pressed into a fragment of vellum. It bears the precise impression of the family crest." Fenton's hand placed it upon the signet after it was broken, creating the illusion that it belonged to Penrose alone. It is the final link, the detail that unmasks the true culprit. One might overlook such a tiny fragment, but in the theatre of deduction, the smallest element may illuminate the entire stage. Lestrade exhaled sharply. "I see it now, Holmes. The ring, the book, the letters, they all point to him. And after the servant's death, the attack on Penrose measures to secure the secret." Holmes inclined his head slightly. "Exactly. The misdirections were clever, yet transparent to a mind trained to observe with patience and reason. Every clue, every action, every misstatement was designed to obscure, yet the pattern was there for the discerning eye. The true motive, inheritance, legacy, and the assertion of a fractured claim has now been revealed. Fenton's actions, though bold, could not escape logical analysis. I marvelled at the unfolding clarity. It is remarkable how the smallest details, the scratches on the floor, the charred letter, the wax, combined to expose a conspiracy that seemed so complex. Holmes smiled faintly, a shadow of satisfaction crossing his features. "Watson, it is ever thus. When one observes with patience and allows the mind to arrange facts without prejudice, the truth asserts itself." The broken signet was the herald of deceit, the hidden book the vessel of revelation, and the letters the bait that lured both the innocent and the guilty alike into view. Everything falls into place once one sees the proper sequence, the interlocking of motive and action. Lestrade, now fully convinced, nodded briskly. You have, once again, illuminated the darkness that baffled the Yard. Fenton will be taken to stand trial and Penrose exonerated. Holmes, rising, gathered the evidence carefully. Yes, Inspector, but remember justice is but the consequence of understanding. Without analysis, one sees only shadows. The case is closed, yet it leaves lessons for those who would rush to judgment. And now, Watson, you shall witness the final arrangements. The law will follow, but the revelation belongs to reason and observation, and never to haste or presumption. Thus the tangled web of deceit, inheritance, and familial intrigue lay exposed, and the series of misdirections that had confounded all but Holmes were at last brought into coherent order. We had witnessed the mind of the criminal, the fallibility of perception, and the inexorable triumph of deduction. The broken signet, once an enigma, had become the key to clarity, and the Musgrave legacy, though bruised, would endure in truth. The days following Fenton's apprehension were marked by an almost surreal calm. Grosvenor Square returned to its accustomed quiet, the fog rolling through the streets as though the recent turbulence had been no more than a momentary disturbance in the fabric of London life. Holmes, for his part, resumed his customary routine at Baker Street with an air of contemplative satisfaction, though the keen light of inquiry in his eyes remained undimmed. Penrose, now formally exonerated, returned to his lodgings under the watchful eye of the constables. He greeted us with gratitude and a sense of relief that was nearly tangible, though his manner betrayed lingering unease. "I scarcely know how to thank you, Mr. Holmes," he said, clasping my hand. "I feared that my reputation and perhaps my life had been irretrievably compromised." Holmes inclined his head with a faint smile. "You were unfortunate in your proximity, Mr. Penrose, yet fortunate in having allies who could discern truth from artifice. It is rarely the innocent who bear the brunt of intrigue, and more rarely still those who possess a keen eye for subtlety among shadows. Lestrade, whose habitual brusqueness was softened by the events of recent days, paid a courtesy of rare cordiality. "I must admit, Holmes, that your deduction has been flawless. Were it not for your insight, I fear the Yard would have pursued Penrose with undue zeal. Jenkins's death might have gone unavenged, and the true plot remained hidden." Holmes waved his hand dismissively. "Justice, Inspector, is not merely a matter of zeal, but of comprehension. The law enforces consequence, but it is reason that exposes guilt and innocence alike. And in this case, the subtle interplay of motive and opportunity demanded patience, observation, and the restraint to withhold premature judgment. I, for my part, reflected upon the fragile chain of events that had threatened to unravel the entire Musgrave legacy. The broken signet, once merely a curiosity, had served as both a harbinger and a key. The letters in blue wax had guided us toward the deeper truth, and the missing genealogical volume had concealed the precise lineage that Fenton sought to exploit. Without Holmes's intervention, the consequence might have been the wrongful incarceration, or worse, of the innocent. Holmes, however, remained focused not on praise, but upon detail. He carefully replaced the evidence within the cabinet, inspecting each fragment to ensure that none was overlooked. "Watson," he said, his tone almost conversational though laden with gravity, "it is worth noting that the resolution of this case is not merely the apprehension of a single malefactor. The exposure of Fenton clarifies the chain of causation. His actions, while premeditated, depended entirely upon the orchestration of threats, deception, and the concealment of crucial records. Every step was deliberate, yet every action led inexorably to his discovery. Lestrade, still somewhat awed, nodded. "The Yard owes you much, Holmes. I shall see that the magistrate is fully briefed on the details. Jenkins' unfortunate death will be considered in the proceedings, but at least the main threat has been neutralized." Holmes, leaning back in his chair with fingers steepled, regarded the inspector for a moment before speaking. "Observe, Lestrade, the most insidious errors are not those of malice, but of oversight. In your eagerness to condemn Penrose, you overlooked subtleties that revealed the true antagonist. Let this be a lesson. Facts are immutable, but interpretation requires care." As Lestrade departed, I turned to Holmes. "It is extraordinary, Holmes, how you piece together such intricate designs. To the rest of us, events appear tangled and contradictory, yet you perceive the logic beneath the chaos." He regarded me with that peculiar mixture of pride and disdain which he reserved for such observations. "Watson, the logic is there, ever present. One need only remove the obfuscation and follow the consequences of each act. The criminal is ever constrained by circumstance, yet he believes himself clever. That is where patience and observation prevail." I could not help but reflect upon the cost borne by Jenkins, the valet, whose loyalty and attentiveness had rendered him a tragic casualty of Fenton's ambition. Holmes, sensing my concern, offered a rare note of sympathy. "Even the most meticulous design carries risk, Watson. Jenkins, though unfortunate, provided us with critical testimony. His sacrifice, though silent, ensured that reason might triumph over guile. It is a reminder that the pursuit of truth is rarely without consequence." In the days that followed, the Musgrave estate resumed its quiet dignity. Sir Reginald's legacy was protected, the hidden records restored to their proper place, and Penrose's name cleared. Yet I noted that Holmes, while outwardly relaxed, remained alert, eyes frequently scanning the streets or lingering upon details that others deemed trivial. The vigilance of his mind, ever attuned to nuance, was as constant as the passage of fog over Baker Street. As evening fell upon the city, Holmes poured himself a cup of tea, gesturing for me to join him. We sat in companionable silence, each reflecting upon the events of the past days. Finally he spoke, his voice contemplative. "Watson, cases such as this are instructive. They remind us that even in the midst of death, deception, and ambition, the sequence of events is governed by cause and effect. The observant mind, patient and discerning, may penetrate the most intricate veil, and thus, as ever, reason prevails where haste, presumption, or passion might fail." I nodded, recognizing in his words the distillation of our recent labors. The tangled web of inheritance, letters, and ambition had been unraveled, the guilty confronted, and the innocent vindicated. Yet, as always, Holmes reminded me that the pursuit of truth demanded constant vigilance and unwavering clarity of thought. The following morning, Baker Street awoke to a clarity of air that seemed to mirror the resolution of the events which had so recently ensnared Grosvenor Square. The fog had lifted, leaving the streets of London crisp and bright beneath a pale winter sun. Holmes, as always, had risen early, already seated before the fire with pipe in hand, the curl of smoke drifting upward in languid spirals. I entered, coffee in hand, and noted the expression upon his face, calm, detached, yet with the faint trace of satisfaction that came only from a case fully resolved. "Holmes," I began, "it seems almost anticlimactic to have Penrose cleared, Fenton in custody, and the Musgrave legacy secured. The sequence was so intricate, and yet now it appears so orderly, as though events had aligned themselves naturally." Holmes looked up, eyes glinting, and gave a small smile. "Orderly, perhaps, but remember, Watson, the apparent simplicity is the product of careful observation. The threads were tangled, yes, but by tracing them with diligence, one sees the pattern. It is the same principle by which the fog is understood, the same by which the hidden hand is revealed. To those who do not observe, the world is chaotic. To the discerning mind, it is a web of cause and effect. I nodded, feeling the weight of his insight settle upon me. "And Jenkins, the unfortunate valet?" I asked, voice low. "His death was tragic, yet crucial to our understanding. Did it trouble you?" Holmes inclined his head. "Certainly, Watson. We must always measure the human cost of inquiry. Jenkins's demise is lamentable, yet his knowledge provided the hinge upon which the truth turned. One cannot dwell upon such events, but one must recognize their significance. Compassion guides us, but clarity governs our conclusions." I placed my cup upon the table, reflecting on the precision with which every aspect of the case had been orchestrated. Letters of wax and secrecy, a hidden book, an ancient genealogy, the broken signet, a symbol of both threat and revelation, had converged in a manner that left one in awe of the subtlety of human design. Holmes, sensing my contemplation, waved a hand in dismissal of overt praise. "Watson, it is ever the way that attention to detail, patience, and logical deduction achieves what force or speculation cannot. The mind, trained to discern rather than assume, can untangle the most perplexing knot. And yet I assure you the task was less remarkable than it appears. Observation and reasoning are tools available to any who choose to employ them." I leaned back, struck by his characteristic modesty mingled with a certain cold detachment. "And what of Fenton? The law will take its course, but can one ever fully comprehend the ambition that drove him to such extremes?" Holmes tapped the fragment of the broken signet lightly upon the desk. "Ambition is a curious faculty. It may drive men to feats of cunning, yet it is constrained by circumstance, as surely as a river is confined by its banks. Fenton misjudged the vigilance of observation, the inevitability of consequence. That is all. The human mind, while capable of great design, is never immune to error when confronted with careful scrutiny." I watched as he absently rotated the tiny object between his fingers, seemingly lost in contemplation, yet acutely aware of the minutest detail within his field of vision. "Do you ever tire, Holmes, of these endless mysteries?" I asked softly. Holmes regarded me for a long moment, his eyes reflecting the faint glow of the fire. "Tire, Watson? No, the world provides inexhaustible fascination. Each case presents a new array of human motives, of deception, of subtle ingenuity. One cannot fatigue from the pursuit of understanding, for understanding is inexhaustible. Yet I confess," he added with the merest hint of dry humour, "I sometimes tire of the errors and impatience of others. That, Watson, is far more vexing than the most labyrinthine mystery." We sat together in quiet reflection, the fire crackling, the city beyond the windows bathed in the clarity of a winter morning. London, oblivious to the drama that had played itself out in one of its squares, went about its daily course, unaware that the fragile thread of heritage, ambition, and deceit had been secured by the calm intellect of a single observer. Holmes finally rose, stretching with the languor of one satisfied with accomplishment. "And now, Watson, we return to our routines. The case of the broken signet is concluded, but the world continues to offer its enigmas. I suspect that within days we shall receive word of some new intrigue, some fresh puzzle to occupy our faculties. Until then, we may rest and observe and contemplate the delicate balance of human affairs." I smiled, aware that, despite the calm of the moment, the pulse of mystery would never leave Baker Street. Holmes, for all his detachment, had once more guided reason to triumph, illuminating hidden motives, preserving the innocent, and delivering the guilty into the hands of justice. The riddle of the broken signet had been unravelled, its lessons indelibly impressed upon our understanding of human ambition, cunning, and the inexorable power of logic. As the morning sun rose higher, casting its light upon the polished floorboards, I could not help but admire once more the singular genius of my friend, and to wonder with anticipation at the next puzzle that would summon him from contemplation into action.